What brought you into media, sir?
Accident.
The brand Eenadu became much bigger than
Of course, Eenadu was the first newspaper not only in this country but in the world.
employees are not treated professionally, they are not paid in time.
Perhaps I won't be able to answer the question you're asking.
The traditional media person wouldn't think like that. Was it because he was not a traditional media person?
You're right, not being a traditional media person.
What was he like a boss in a media house?
Demanding, like any other boss.
We need to make money for the organization to survive.
The primary focus was not making money.
What made Eenadu succeed?
Your classifieds, your retail, information, entertainment, all these are ads which appear, address the reader.
Do you think where is the future for print, sir?
Print will remain.
Keeping with the times, the print also has to go digital.
Every newspaper has a digital version.
What prompted Mr. Ramoji Rao to take up again a media as a venture, sir?
The main focus was journalism and also to give something to the reader. That was more important.
Welcome to Conversations on Hybiz. Today, we have with us a media person, and no ordinary media person. He straddled the media field for quite a long time, especially in the twin cities of Hyderabad and Secunderabad, but even known nationally. We are talking about I Venkat, the director of Eenadu Group, of media channels. You name it, print, everything, he has seen it and done it. Welcome to the show, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Mr. Venkat, the usual question which I ask everybody, but I'll have to change it a bit more for your sake, because you're not a typical entrepreneur, so to speak of. You run a company. When you look at your early days, where did you hail from? Who were your parents, your siblings? How was your early days, sir?
I've been a true blue Hyderabadi all my life. We've been here since our grandfather's time. Although we come from a village called Pedmuddalini, Gudivada, Pamaru, but we never lived there, migrated long ago. My grandfather was a doctor, so was my father, so was my uncle, so were my cousins. We come from a family of doctors. I somehow drifted off into media world by accident. It was not a design. So that's generally the background. I grew up in Maratpalli, Secunderabad, and being there, we have an ancestral house there still. We do live partly there and partly in a separate place where I live in the Maratpalli.
So, what about your siblings and others, sir? I mean,
I have three sisters older to me and one brother younger to me. He died many years ago, about 30, 40 years ago. And I have two of the three sisters also passed away. So, only me and my middle sister are left.
so when you say that you grew up as a true-blood Hyderabadi and it's almost 3 generations, you did mention that everybody in your family, most of them are doctors, and you drifted away into media. What brought you into media, sir?
Accident.
So, but your education, what was your early education like?
In our time when we went to college, we just had an option of getting into graduation, engineering or medicine. That's it. I mean, since I couldn't get into medicine, we went into graduation. Then I was looking for a job and landed up in a group company called Kiranats then. It's an advertising agency. Mr. Ramoji Rao started in those days, much before I joined, of course, and joined as a trainee. And I was there, trainee, then become an executive. And then when Eenadu started, I was offered the job of the manager advertising in Visakhapatnam. I shifted to Visakhapatnam for a year. Then the headquarters of Eenadu shifted to Hyderabad. So the entire thing was shifted. So I also moved to Hyderabad and remained in Hyderabad all through.
So, I should actually ask you something about Mr. Ramoji Rao, because he's like a colossus. He was a legend of his lifetime. Everybody knows him. Everybody's seen him. In fact, there's a Malayalam movie called Ramoji Rao Speaking. I don't know. It's an old movie, pretty old, about 30 years old. But even now, people still remember that name. It was not Ramoji, but Ramoji Rao Speaking. They used that name. But I believe that's how he used to say sometimes when he calls up people. So my question is, what prompted Mr. Ramoji Rao to take up again a media as a venture, sir? Because you would
The
know it
story
outright.
goes like this. Way back in 72, 73, he wanted to start a hotel project in Vizag called Dolphin.
Dolphin, yes, sir.
He used to go there regularly and stay there for about a week or 10 days since the project was in initial days. And the newspapers were delivered only around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening. Newspapers from Vijayawada used to be loaded in the train called Madras Calcutta Mail in the morning, 6 o'clock or so. It used to leave Vijayawada and reach Visakhapatnam by 1 o'clock or 1:30. By the time they've delivered, it used to be about 3 or 4. All newspapers, whether English, Telugu, English and Telugu generally, they used to be delivered. So he realized there's potential. I understand, it was also told, he tried to persuade Mr. Kailan Prasad, who used to run Andhra Jyoti in Vijayawada, to start an edition there, saying that there's potential. So he somehow felt, I believe, not so great an idea. He didn't. So that's how he got the idea and started the Eenadu in Visakhapatnam, where there's no paper. He thought, it's time that I delivered the newspaper by sunrise to all the people around in that area, and that's how he started Eenadu.
This was when, so which year was this?
1974.
74. So it's basically about almost 50 years ago. You can technically say that. The question obviously would be when, of course, everybody knows Dolphin Hotels, everybody knows, but I think the brand Eenadu became much, much, much bigger than what the entire thing was. You had sister companies, Priya, you have Margadarshi and other brands also. But the question is, what was he like a boss in a media house?
Demanding, like any other boss, also very accommodative, used to guide us. It used to be good and fun working with him quite often. Also used to get the big bets. Being a boss, he has the right. So all that used to be a part of it.
Many people still say, when they talk about media houses, the usual thing is, one, employees are not treated professionally. Second, they are not paid in time. But once Mr. Ramoji Rao came up with Eenadu, I believe the game changed. Employees in Eenadu used to get paid on the 1st of every month. 30th of the one day before.
One day before.
And
last working day of the month.
And they used to get it regularly. And more importantly, they used to be treated very professionally, as you said. What made him think like that? Because a traditional media person wouldn't think like that. Was it because he was not a traditional media person?
Perhaps I won't be able to answer in the question you're asking me, but perhaps you're right, not being a traditional media person. But I must also add here that other newspapers also paid in time. Maybe there must have been some here and there, but by and large, everybody used to be paid.
But no, I was told most of the people, those days I'm talking, now it's, of course, world has changed now. In between, I remember when my early days, when I wrote my journalism entrance for Osmania, there was a newspaper called News Time. Of course, the industry shifted to Hyderabad, as you said. Eenadu group itself shifted to Hyderabad. Many editions started. But how did the Telugu edition success decide to go with an English edition?
The English also, there was a need for a good English paper. Since you mentioned about News Time, you would have seen the content of News Time was far, far different from other newspapers, including the national newspapers also, which were here. Even today, occasionally I do get people saying that, listen, we missed News Time. Because it had, it was fashioned. In fact, much later, every other newspaper followed the same format. Started with, the city news, then the state news, then the edit page, the international news. Sports. That formatting was done by News Time. The rest, now every other newspaper you pick up in the marketplace, you have those same kind of format. And he also had a lot of features called a family page. Then he had one a photo feature every day at the back page. These are all something new which was not there in the newspaper. It was more like a newspaper giving news, views, features, everything for the...
I still have a cutting of an article which I wrote way back in 82 or 83 for News Time. It was a sports story about an Olympics, I think, where your sports editor requested me to write a small piece, and I still have that cutting, yellowed cutting somewhere in my archives. But more importantly, sir, News Time, Eenadu succeeded brilliantly. There were newspapers like, as you said, Andhra Jyoti and others who were already there. Possibly even older than that. Vishala Andhra was there.
Andhra Prabha was there.
Andhra Prabha was
part of the Indian Express group, which was
it was there. In this entire crowd of Telugu newspapers, Eenadu succeeded. And they succeeded what was said and done. At the end of the day, it made money. And there's no shying away from that fact. I worked for the Times of India group for 18 years, and there the philosophy was something very similar. We need to make money for the organization to survive. Let us not drift away from that. Advertising is the main bread and butter. What made Eenadu succeed?
Unlike Times of India, the primary focus was not making money. Primary focus was journalism and also to give something to the reader. That was more important. And they understood the needs of the reader And the content, if you look at Eenadu, is completely reader focused. It's written in their language to begin with. The features were also, I mean, the news and the features were also catered in the similar fashion. To give you some examples of how it succeeded, of course, Eenadu was the first newspaper, not only in this country but in the world, to start a pay section separately for each district.
Correct.
You had the main newspaper, you had the district newspaper.
Correct.
So that means that a person in a district was getting in a separate section altogether his news.
Local news.
Local news. And the main section was in any case giving the rest of the content which was there. So that was for the first time done in 87, way back in 87. Now no newspaper has done that. Much later, when other newspapers realized that this became a success, no exaggeration, every single newspaper in this country came to spend time here, understand how it was possible, and so on and so forth. Now, if you take going one step further, just to give you, I mean, the lot of list of things I can mention, but
okay, please go ahead, sir.
Take, for example, Hyderabad city, they had a separate paper. Day one itself, when the city paper was launched in 87, I think 87, yeah, the city section was again divided into 9 zones.
Correct.
It had a separate zone for Charminar, separate zone for Abid, separate zone for Kairathabad, then Secunderabad, then Tarnaka, then, name it. It was divided into 9 zones. That means if you go into that zone, you will get your zone news, you will get your city news.
That's true.
That's an experiment which was unthinkable by any other person, which was done by Eenadu. And that became a great success, and they liked it.
Correct. Now, how did you editorially manage this logistics?
More than editorial, the more important was the circulation distribution.
Circulation part of that.
One side of the road is one zone, the other side of the road is another zone. Then from day one itself, there never been a duplication. One paper went here, there, that zone.
And you had to insert.
Nothing. I mean, it went off peacefully, and that was more a nightmarish thing to accomplish.
When you talk of Eenadu, the success of Eenadu, there is also the failure of News Time. You spoke of News Time, excellent newspaper, no doubt about it, ahead of its time, possibly. Why did News Time not succeed in the group, or with, say, even in a market like Andhra Pradesh then?
There are some reasons which I'll give you merely from the other side of it. Forget the content part of it where people liked it. Newspaper is no longer just a newspaper. Readers want everything in it. When I say everything, it means not just the news. They also want, you ask a direct question to any reader, they say the newspaper is good and we'll read it. They'll never say that I buy it for the advertisements. Correct. Now, if you look at a newspaper, its success, it has your classifieds, it has your retail, it has information from entertainment. All these are ads which appear. Subconsciously, they address the reader. Also. Now, there have been occasions where we went into the market and asked the guy, saying that why don't you buy a News Time, or why do you like Chronicle? So his reaction was, "Saab, aapke paas cinema nahi aata, saab." So we used to tell them, we gave in a condensed form in a page. Aisa nahi, saab, picture chahiye, saab, picture chahiye. So they had different needs. If you get into the general Aam Janta, they wanted classifieds. Classifieds are pulling power for a newspaper. Chronicle had that. So these are some of the things which newspapers make it a composite thing. I remember even way back in sometime in 80s in Delhi, Hindustan. I was in one of my friend who was in the business. Was talking to him. He says Hindustan Times is a good paper. Granted. I wanted Indian Express. My wife used to refuse to get Indian Express for simple reasons. She doesn't get anything in terms of what's happening in the city, in terms of the ads and so on. Ads give information. Sure. So we had to buy Hindustan Times.
So that's what. So the excellent example which you gave in terms of how different markets serve different needs. The question also comes to the fact that when television came in, we know that it started with Doordarshan with Asian Games in 85 and color television came in. And then small channels like NDTV came in initially. And then Eenadu came into being. Was the decision to start a news channel a very obvious extension to the print brand?
Actually, it was not a news channel. It's a GEC.
That's
a channel where we had also news in that.
Correct.
Every hour we used to give a 5-minute capsule, and The main news was morning 7 o'clock and night 9 o'clock. These were the main two big capsules. So we made the entire channel in such a way that the viewer had not just the entertainment, he also had news along with that.
Correct.
Much later, of course, we spun it off and made a separate news channel where there was a need for a news channel. But initially, it was largely the GEC
content
with news content. Even now, our GEC has 9 o'clock news. Very popular.
Okay. But one other decision which is very surprising, usually news channels are all located within the city proper. I think he was one of the first visionaries, Ramoji Rao, where he decided that it would be outside the city, maybe for future expansion purpose or anything. He located it in the Ramoji Film City, which again is a brilliant idea of his, which even today people from outside Hyderabad, anybody who comes to visit the city makes it a point to go to Ramoji. The decision to base it there, of course, you had a small studio here in the city itself. But was that conscious decision taken to establish a full-fledged city because you already had requisite facilities for movie making there?
No, one of the things which was there in the Ramoji Film City is you had ample space. You didn't have the constraints of space. Second, it lent itself to natural environs very well. So you didn't have to get closed into a office space and so on and so forth. There you had the freedom. So plus also to keep all your uplinking facilities, it was much easier in that place rather than city.
So when COVID came in, we saw a dramatic shift in the way media was consumed, so as to speak, both television and print. People were not getting newspapers at home for some days, a few weeks at least. And post-COVID, the world changed totally. Not just again for print, even for television. We saw digital coming into a big way because people got used to the fact that you could watch a news on a mobile phone. That is the kind of thing that happened. Of course, the data expansion thanks to Geo and all that. But do you think since you are a print veteran more than a television veteran, I can just say that way with the right sense of authority. Did you see most of the newspapers are reporting a dip in circulation? Have the readers stopped buying a newspaper because they got used to the idea, look, I survived without newspapers during COVID, why should I continue? Or the younger generation, like my daughter and others, they don't read a newspaper. Is it because that the newspaper circulation across the board, I mean, let us not be, are stagnating or even dipping? So
COVID has really given a big blow to newspaper industry. So it has given to even television, not so much, but to some extent. Now, the newspapers have lost anywhere between 15, 20, 25% of the circulation.
Correct.
In COVID, of course, there was no distribution at all, barring a few places where every newspaper across the country managed to send some newspapers. Post-COVID, slowly it picked up. And I would say that today, ranging between 70 to 80, 90% of the newspapers have regained their circulation. Kerala being the leader, they've got back almost 90% of the circulation, 90 odd. Other states across the country could be 70, 80, 90, depends. Not 90, but 70 to 80%.
There's been a gradual shift, not a gradual, and actually COVID made it more dramatic, where people moved from reading a print to getting into reading digital media. As I said before, reading it on a phone or reading it on an iPad or a laptop, people started getting used to e-paper and other concepts. Even short clips. So same thing happened to television. They shifted more of the energy of main content into digital format and started catering to that segment. Do you think where is the future for print, sir? Is it to do with the fact that keeping with the times, the print also has to go digital?
Every newspaper has a digital version.
Correct.
Both e-paper as well as the app. So they are reading in the digital format also regularly. It's not as though that it's only confined to newspapers or television or.
True.
Now, one major shift which has happened is in the recent times, which you are also aware of, is television itself has seen a change going. OTT has become big. Now, no longer the GEC channels which were rolling the roost are the mainstay. So I know some people in Hyderabad, friends of mine, They say that we don't have a cable connection or you don't have a Sky connection. We only depend on OTT. That's enough for us. Quite a few, in fact. Actually, in reality, the television viewing has dropped.
Because people have become very choosy in terms of what they're watching. So, but the main question that would again come is, you are the head of INS and you were spent.
I'm not the head of INS. I play a role there.
Yeah, it's still there. I'm just saying, in the heydays, you were the big boss of it. We all used to admire you. We used to see you in ad club functions. We used to see you there. You have traveled across India. You have dealt with media apart from just being an Eenadu. When you look at the way media has evolved and over a period of time, the next generation and the generation after that has taken over, do you think print will continue to stay, or will there be, say, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, a shift from pure print to something else? I don't know what it's going to be, but is there going to be something else?
Print will remain. If you look at right from the days of the 60s and 70s, the only thing which existed was print.
Correct.
Then came in radio to a large extent. Of course, Doordarshan, not Doordarshan, All India Radio, and it became popular, FM radio and all that of the government. Then came in newspapers, started expanding into other markets, which was earlier just one, like I mentioned to you, Vijayawada was the main hub where all newspapers were printed.
Correct.
When we started, we went to Visakhapatnam, from where there no newspaper there. Along the line, we started 23 editions in practically every district of Andhra Pradesh. So today, the strength of the newspaper is not just in one city or one place, particularly language newspapers. They're spread across the length and breadth of the state or the area where they print and distribute. That became an advantage for language newspapers. To your question, giving a direct answer, language newspapers will outlast English any day. Because if you take any English newspaper, by and large, it's confined to the urban India.
True, sir.
You go outside Hyderabad, you maybe in a Warangal and Nizamabad and things like that, you may find about some copies of English newspapers. But language goes beyond Warangal into the hinterland, and you still have that.
That's true. Actually, what you rightly described, but if I ask you, among all the language newspapers or language media, and broadly speaking, just a newspaper or beyond it, which one do you think has really kept up pace? Which language do you think has kept up pace?
Eenadu did certainly that. I mean, not only that, what we also had in Eenadu, just mentioned to you about district newspapers. Why Eenadu became a success is that which everybody else copied in the country. We were the first newspaper to start a page for women in '92. A separate page, and branded it as Vasundhara.
Vasundhara, I remember that.
Later, we added in 2001 onwards, we added a separate page for youth, separate page for children, sports, etc., etc. About 8 features were launched between 2001 and 3. So, a page, separate page for each one of them, which nobody experimented. All that goes to the credit of Eenadu, which practically every newspaper in the country has followed that in some form or other. I'm not saying exactly the district newspaper concept, nor the women's page, or so they have all followed. So I mean, Eenadu certainly gets the credit for that. Others have followed. Now others also have done in their own way. They've brought in changes which are good based on their requirement, their local requirements.
You also dealt with the advertising industry because you started with Kiran ads, and there again you have seen a dramatic shift in the way ad agencies function. Ad agencies and newspapers have a symbiotic relationship. They both have to depend on each other for business. What are the changes that you've seen even in the ad industry in brief, sir? Because I know you're not directly dealing with ad industry right now.
Ad industry has changed dramatically. The full service agency, which existed till about early part of this century, is no longer there. Now you only have media agencies and you have creative agencies. Even creative agencies have become far and few.
That's true.
Hyderabad, which had every single agency in the country having their branch and operating here, today, except one, everybody packed up. There's nobody existing in Hyderabad. So that's been the thing. Once the media has become separate and creative agency has become separate, it has seen different changes altogether.
The buying is separate now. The media
buying is separate. Everything is focused buying. Based on
creatives also become freelancers. Today, people buy from freelancers.
They buy from freelancers. They buy based on various parameters.
So, Ramoji Rao was, as I described before, a colossus, and you directly worked under him. must be a father figure to you. Uh, as a person, you said how he functions as a man, but were there other mentors in your life whom you looked up and said, "Wow, they taught me, or he taught me, or she taught me some lessons."
None to match him. I have come across quite a few, but none to match him in terms of his. He is a perfectionist. One of the reasons why he succeeded is he is a perfectionist to the core. Everything had to be done strictly according to the ABCD to A to Z, means A to Z only. It doesn't move from. So that's one of the reasons why he succeeded in whatever he did. Of course, they win. Some news time was not a success, but you have.
But then after his passing away, has that A to Z still remained as a philosophy?
By and large, the same philosophy continues now. It's just a few months. He passed away, I think, in July. Yeah, now 4 months or 5 months. So.
And when you look at your such an exhaustive professional career, were there any moments that you look back and say, this was my high point in my life? Or the moment is still to come?
I don't know which way to say that, but there have been some which we have. I have had this advantage of being the only person who had both print and television as to lead. Portfolio to lead, which nobody had this in the country. Every newspaper or channel which had charts, newspaper started a channel, they kept them separately. So I had the advantage of being both in print and television. That's number one, which gave me access into the media world, advertising world, between print and television. I mean, they've looked at as one entity. My passion has always been in terms of systems being put in place. The proper system, process systems, when I say this process, had to be in place. We can certainly claim that we have some of the finest processes both in print and television, and certainly in print particularly, even in television also print. Today we have created this in-house. We have a company called Margasi Computers separately within the group. There are some people who create the software for us. So with them, we created a software which I've seen the SAP software in Manorama, I've seen that in Hindu, I've seen that in Times of India and Hindustan Times, and all the major newspapers use SAP. We are miles ahead of them in terms of our requirement. The reason being, this was user generated, user created, not generated, user created. SAP is vendor driven. They have the whole thing, they come to you, they have 5, 10%, 15%, they change and put it into place. In our case, right from scratch, everything has been built. So this is something which we have achieved, together working.
When you look back at your life and say, if given a chance, I would have done this something differently. You straddled television and print, by the way. That's a great job. How different is television and print when you're coming to, say, operationally, profitability wise, or even running it as a content?
They're totally different. Content, if you mention content for television is different, content for print is different. In print, you have all these various things which I just mentioned to you. In television, they are there. But television, one advantage is that they have the content which is instant. I mean, you bang, it comes into you. In print, is like an appointment reading. It's with you. You actually spend time. In television, it just goes off.
The breaking news culture there.
The culture. So both have their advantages and disadvantages. But print, in my opinion, still has that.
Which is what my penultimate question would be coming to is, what is the future for media looking like? Media, I'm saying broadly. You have print, you have radio, you have television, you have digital, and you have other formats.
All of them coexist. Not in the same percentage of strength and weaknesses. All of them will coexist.
And running a newspaper or a television profitably, is it still a challenge?
Now it's even more a bigger challenge because post-COVID, it has become different, totally different.
So when you talk to a wannabe entrepreneur, I mean, I've seen many people come and say, oh, we want to start a YouTube channel. We want to start a web channel. We want to start a kind of instant news, like in shorts kind of product. What advice would you give them, sir?
Actually, whether you take any of these YouTube channels, you take any of these digital channels which are coming up, they don't need any investment at all. Some of them have some ideas, they come into it. Very small number of them are succeeding. Majority of them do not succeed. But the web is so huge in this universe. Anybody and everybody has space. Unlike a newspaper, you must be something really worth the while for the reader to pick you up, or a television channel also. But as far as web is concerned, the whole world is before you. So some of them succeed in whatever they plan to do, but majority of them.
Are you planning to retire anytime?
I will, sooner or later I have to.
No. You look still, you're still there. I mean, I Venkat is a fixture in Eenadu. He's always there. And you walk into the corner room, he's there. You expect him to be there. The question is, when you look back into your life and when you say, okay, fine, tomorrow I'm going to hang up my shoes and sit and read books or play with grandchildren or whatever it is, various people are various things, or take a holiday. What do you want to be remembered as? And somebody says about I Venkat, you say, okay, the media mogul, he's a media professional.
I'm not a mogul like this.
No, whatever it is. I'm just giving examples.
I also work here like everybody else here.
So that's what. So how do you like to be remembered as?
As Venkat only.
As Venkat?
That's it.
Just as I Venkat.
Yeah.
In fact, that initial is very surprising. I mean, people say that, it has it smacks of a bit of, I am Venkat kind of thing. Mr. I Venkat, wonderful talking to you about your journey, your media journey, your business ethics, way you work with a legend like Ramoji Rao, and of course, the way you look at the way to run an institution profitably. That's more important. Thank you very much for speaking to us at Hybiz. And Hybiz also would like to take a bit of it, but I will speak to you in a general sense. That is what my entire questioning was all about. That, we had to discover a journey within you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Namaskar. Ladies and gentlemen, that was I Venkat, the boss of Eenadu. Because he's a fixture, he's known, he's equated with Eenadu. That's very important. But more importantly, he's a man who's seen media from its early days to the way it is right now. A world of difference. He still adjusts, he still gets along with it. And that's the most important thing. When many people have just walked away from it. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.